If you're interested in learning how to budget or practical ways to enhance your existing budget, then stick around because this video is for you. Otherwise, keep scrolling. I am Tana from TANA'S Log, and this is Practical Finance, a common sense approach to managing money, because we believe that people should understand how stuff works. Now, these tips probably not gonna make you rich, but it should help you manage your money better. Okay, so while you're here, subscribe to the channel so that you could get future content, and please take a look at the disclaimer, because while I have a finance degree, I'm a chartered financial analyst and a professional risk manager, what I am not is a registered investment advisor. Therefore, nothing in these videos should be construed as investment advice. Always consult your investment advisor before making any investments. Okay, now that we've done all the legal needfuls, let's get to it. Okay, so the topic of this video is budgeting. Budgeting is the foundation of personal finance. In fact, it's the foundation of all finance because you need to know how much money you have, what your ins and your outs are to be able to manage your house or your business. Okay, you always hear people saying, I have to check my budget, or that's not in my budget, but how many people know actually how to budget? I mean, financial experts, they always say, make a budget and stick to it. Well, duh. Or they say, you need to spend less than you earn. Well, obviously, but how do we actually do it? So this video, we're gonna give you 10 practical ways to start budgeting. If you're not already budgeting, shame on you. And to enhance your existing budgets. All right, and at the end, as a bonus, we'll give you a sneak peek at the spreadsheet that we created from scratch to actually help us manage our money. No, the spreadsheet is not gonna be available. It's just to show you the kinds of things you should be looking at when you're budgeting. But before we get to the tips, we need to say something about mindset. Mindset is the most important thing, and you'll hear me discuss your mindset in each of the videos in this series. You need to figure out, why do I want to budget? Okay, maybe you want to get control of your spending. Maybe you have goals you want to hit. You want to buy a house. You want to reduce debt. You want to save for retirement. Or maybe you just want to avoid missing bills so that a bailiff don't turn up outside your house while you're home watching Love After Lockup. Okay? The next thing, you might hear people say, well, I don't need to budget, I have no money. Especially if you have no money, you need to budget, because then you need more control over your spending, because it's very difficult to increase your income, but you could also try to cut back here and there on your spending. Finally, you hear people say, YOLO, you only live once. That mentality only works if you're a hippie or somebody with no responsibilities. Otherwise, you don't want to wait till you're retired and you have to stand up and take people receipts at the door to PriceMart or Walmart or whatever to pay for your retirement. Start budgeting now. All right, so now let's move on to the actual tips. Tip number 1, write it down. A budget is nothing more than income minus expenses, but you need to write it down. And there are a number of ways you could do that. You could do it on a copybook page, you could do it on a whiteboard, you could do it on a blackboard and chalk like a caveman, or you could use software. I personally like to use Microsoft Excel because it's easy, it's flexible, and I like modeling. No, not that kind of modeling, financial modeling. Tip number 2, don't be out of timing. And by this, I mean budget as frequently as you get paid, whether it's weekly, fortnightly, monthly. Daily might be a bit too much because you might be spending more time budgeting than actually making money, but you need to budget every time you get paid. Now, I personally, I'd probably take it to extreme because I budget like every 2-3 days, right? But what this does, it allows me to see when there may be charges I don't really recognize. So as a side note, this allowed me to realize that while I home watching a Law and Order marathon, watching Lenny Briscoe and Ray Curtis solve crime, it had two blokes in an ATM in Woodbrook taking out my money. If I wasn't budgeting, who knows how much of my $100 they would have taken out. All right, so Don't be out of timing. Budget as often as you get paid. Tip number 3, gather all the info. All the info you're going to need to estimate your income and your expenses. Yes, even the dinner special that you buy for your side piece, yes, that has to go into your budget. Now, the balance in your account now when you start the budget, that's your beginning balance. And then when you calculate your income minus your expenses, whatever is left over, assuming there's stuff left over, that will become your balance for next period. Now, there are a number of sources to get the information. You can check your bank statements, you can check whatever bills you have, even that pile of receipts that your husband or wife always tell you to move from on top of the dresser, them little links receipts, yes, those have all your spending that you need to be capturing. All right, so gather the info. Tip number 4, budget forward. Basically what we're saying here is budget paycheck to paycheck. Never budget for a calendar month unless you get paid on the last day of the month, right? Don't make the mistake I make, because then you're forgetting about that struggle week just before you get paid. In China, we know it as scrunt week, right? So budget paycheck to paycheck. That way, you'll always know what your balance should be just before you get your next cash injection from your employer, your child father, or your sugar daddy. The next tip is one of the most important. It's tip number 5, do an annual budget. A lot of people only budget for one pay period or 1 month, right? But that only gives you visibility until the end of that month. Think about it. Businesses never just budget for 1 month or 1 quarter. They budget for the entire year, and so should you. That way you could take large expenses and break them up into smaller bite-sized pieces, right? And that way you could plan for things like carnival costume down payment, Fed tickets, any of those big expenses that would cause you trouble in one particular month. And budgeting for an entire year avoids making January the longest month. January doesn't need to be the longest month if you put something aside throughout the year. Once you have your annual budget, the next thing is something you should pay attention to. Watch out for unexpected expenses. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but watch out for unexpected expenses. Unexpected income seldom happens. I mean, unless you win a playway or granny bless you with a 10,000 in a birthday card. But unexpected expenses could wreck your budget. Okay, but to me, and in my experience, there are very few things that qualify for me as an unexpected expense. A medical emergency, emergency repairs on your car, on your home. Those are things that some may be able to be taken care of through insurance, but those aren't really things that you could plan for, right? Some things that people think are unexpected expenses are things you really should be planning for. So your car insurance premium, your home insurance premium, okay? Putting aside money to wax your unmentionables so that you're not wolfing out. Those are things you're supposed to be planning for. So when you're doing your annual budget, always take the big expenses, break it out, and always be on the watch for unexpected expenses. Tip number 7, track everything. Like Rich Forrester or Captain Cook, track everything, okay? And be granular. Be granulated like sugar, right? A lot of people, when they're budgeting, they use broad categories like utilities or entertainment. But while that might be good to do graphs, because the less categories, the graphs look nice, but it offers very little insight into exactly where your money going and where you could cut back if you need to, okay? So track everything. My categories include things like Fed tickets, carnival costume, Fed match dues, and I put in a little something just in case I have to buy, the odd bottle of gin or 2 that I didn't plan for, although that shouldn't really be an unplanned expense, but you know what I mean. Tip number 8, okay, this is where the experts tell you always spend less than you earn, right? So tip number 8 is a balanced budget. You need to have a balanced budget. However, the trick is, if you're budgeting annually, right, there may be months that depending on what you have to spend money on, there may be certain months that it might be a little bit negative, but overall the aim should be to be positive for the entire year, right? So for my budget, when we see it at the end of this video, you will see there were maybe a couple months where, certain things come up, you might want to do something, and because you have money carried over from the months that you're positive, those subsidize the months that you're negative. But by the time you get to the end of the year, you should be positive overall, right? Because we individuals, we're not like a company or a government that could run deficit budgets for as long as they want and just keep rolling it forward until it's somebody else's problem. The bailiff coming by us, right? AVNOs, courts, whoever it is, they come by us. So make sure your budget is positive over the year, all right? Our next tip is to remember that budgets are dynamic, like KES or Vibes Cartel, right? What happens in one period should inform what happens in the following period and the periods after that, okay? So think about it. You can't be budgeting $100 for aloo pie this month and you spend $150. And then you budget again $100 next month and you spend another $150, right? By now you're down $100. You should update your budget and say, well, maybe as a person who don't eat $100 in aloo pie, maybe I eat $150 if you don't want to cut down. But if you realize, maybe I over budget by $50, I should cut down to my $100. And that's how your budget's supposed to help modify your behavior, okay? Either you change your budget to meet your actions or you change your actions to meet your budget, okay? So budgets are dynamic, remember that. Now the last tip is a kind of philosophical one. So always remember that budgets are unique, right? There's not a spandex onesie, right? So no two people's budgets are the same. So maybe you're not in a position to save right now, but if you use the budgeting tips I gave you, then maybe you might be able to find some areas where you could cut down that could put you in a position to save. Or if you're already saving, but you think you're not saving enough, right? And we will discuss savings in one of the next videos, but you might be saving your budget can help you discover areas where you may be, spending too much. Like, you might have too much credit card debt or one or too many trips to Wonderful World or Mickles. So remember that budgets are unique and don't judge your budget by somebody else's budget. And that's the last tip we have. So we're gonna move on now to the bonus section. Okay, but before we go into this spreadsheet, let me just explain that I built this spreadsheet from scratch. It wasn't really built to be used by anybody else but me. It's I'm not sure how user-friendly you may find it is. It's pretty simple to me, but I'm always using Excel. So no, I'm not gonna provide the spreadsheet. I may help you with your spreadsheet if you reach out to me, but otherwise it's just for you to get an idea of the kind of things that I look at and how it helps me to just stay on top of the little pittance I have to manage, every month, every year. All right, so without further ado, let's take a look at the spreadsheet. All right, so now we take a look at my budget dashboard. This is basically the summary of all my budgeting information. So this is for the month of August, as in the pay period for August, because the last time we got paid was the end of August, even though this is the first week of September. So on top here we have the RBC check-in, saving, RBL, FCB, all our bank account information, our total cash. The total funds available is equal to the total cash plus the investment balances. Now all these figures are made up figures, okay? The net worth is calculated elsewhere. And then in this first graph here, we have income minus expenses. As you recall, we said that you should be striving to be positive throughout the year, but there may be a couple months, and you can see that for June and July I was negative, but generally the trend was positive. All right, moving on, we have our account balances here. This is the actual total balance and the budget for all our bank accounts, okay, as you can see here. all these bank accounts. And if we wanted to go to the individual accounts, we can go to FCB, we can go to RBC, we can check RBL, we can even go back and look at it all, right? And then we can also change the time period. So if we want to look January to March, or we wanted to look January to August, and even for the entire January to December. So there, it's actually pretty flexible. We just change this back to the total. And then we go down to the bottom here. We have some of our selected expenses from our bank account, actual versus budget, last month, this month, and the budget. As you can see here, in restaurant and food, we were above budget. And also for other categories like home care, we did some renovations, I guess, and ATM withdrawal, right? And then, so that's the expenses side of it. And then across here, we have a credit card balance. So I removed all the numbers to the side here, but you can safe to say that this was a ridiculous balance. And then around March or April, we paid that all the way down, and that had to do with the deferrals that we got we didn't need. So we paid that down, and then now we've progressed since then, and we had a little spike in August, but we're on track to pay it down by the end of December. And then finally, we have our credit card charges, which basically shows the proportion of our expenses that we put on our credit card, what we spent money on. So this whole thing here is our budget spreadsheet, and it's all fed by these tabs here. These orange tabs are data, these green tabs are the register, which feeds into the account information. We could even go back and look at July. Let's just refresh it here. So you can see these are July numbers. There's a different picture in July, and then we can go back to August and refresh that again, and you can see it all changes. So it's a pretty dynamic spreadsheet. The last thing I would like to say is make sure you save your budget spreadsheet to a shared drive like OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever it is Apple have. All right, that way you can access your spreadsheet anywhere. Right, so there you have my spreadsheet. I hope it made sense to you. I hope this video helps you. Remember that budgeting only works if you stick to it. In the next installment of Practical Finance, we're going to be talking about savings. Okay, so I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, share the video, and good luck.